All right. I'm with Bob Moriarty, founder and editor of 321gold.com. Bob, how are you today?
I'm doing very good.
You know, I'm interested to hear your take on what happened over the weekend in Switzerland with the US and China. It seems that perhaps we weren't getting the full story about what was going on in the background between the US and China over the last several weeks. And then all of a sudden, they put together this meeting in Switzerland, and did they even come to a deal? You know, what's your take on it?
I don't think they did. Okay, some of the things I'm amazed at the degree to which we're being lied to about everything. And I used to feel like it was primarily the Democrats doing it, and I had more confidence in the Republicans. And unfortunately, it's just not there. We are being told stuff that is so stupid, I'm shocked anybody believes it. Now, it's not a deal. It's a 90-day ceasefire. I don't think there's any question both economies have been hurt. And I think the U.S. economy has been hurt worse. But Trump's idea of a deal is to lower tariffs from 145% to 54%. And I don't think that's the deal.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a deal to me, but I guess the market took it to be progress towards a future deal and a de-escalation. So I get it. I mean, it is a de-escalation. We were basically with a trade embargo, you know, with China throughout the month of April. So this is positive, I guess, for the economy, but it's still far from a deal. And even if the tariff rate is only 30%, that's still a pretty big impact, and consumers are going to start to feel it. Who do you think has the upper hand between China and the U.S. in this trade spat?
Okay, I think it's China. Okay, Trump is a master at claiming victory in events that he has no victory in. It's amazing to hear him talk about Ukraine, and if the two parties can't come to some kind of agreement, he's going to walk away from the negotiations. And I laugh because he said the United States had nothing to do with starting the war, which of course is hilarious because it totally ignores the coup d'etat in 2014. But in any case, I think if you add all of the tariffs up, and it's not just 30%, it's 30% plus. I think it was a reduction from 145% to 54%. And I don't see any advance in orders with a 54% tariff. I think the whole tariff thing is stupid beyond belief. It has thrown a monkey wrench into a world economy that's teetering on the verge of a cliff. So it's going to be interesting to see, but what I'm going to say is we're not being told the truth. We're not allowed to make intelligent decisions about it. We have to guess at what's going on. But I don't think when you've got two partners who have guns aimed at each other's heads and you force them into removing the guns and just holding a knife to the other person's throat, I don't think that's a victory.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting in early April, once the Liberation Day really kicked off and markets went into turmoil very quickly, a narrative quickly formed that U.S. exceptionalism, quote unquote, was over. So this theory that the U.S. has been an exceptional venue for foreign investors over the last few years. You know, the returns on the U.S. stock market, the Mag 7, have been phenomenal. So there was this U.S. exceptionalism trade, and the Liberation Day marked the end of the exceptionalism of the United States of America. Is that narrative true, Bob? And where else can they invest if they flee the U.S.?
Well, that's two really good questions. I do believe the American exceptionalism is dead. When you got a guy like Trump who comes in and declares war on Canada and declares war on China and declares war on Mexico and declares war on Nicaragua, come on, give me a break. I don't think that aggressive behavior is a good form of international diplomacy. And Donald Trump is anything but a diplomat. He flip-flops. It's like watching a tennis tournament from 5 feet away from the net, and you're just going back and forth. He changes things so rapidly. And quite bluntly, he doesn't tell the truth about anything. He claimed victory in a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. India turned around today and said, no, Trump didn't have anything to do with that. We were talking before he even came in. So we're in an interesting situation. And, you know, my bottom line is really simple. I have warned for years that bad things were coming. Stock market's terribly overblown. And one day there's going to be a crash. We're going to have to pay for all our sins. I can't come up with a number, but in the cryptocurrencies, there's cryptocurrencies that are up 30% the last 2 days. Now, that's not a rational investment. So investors are caught literally between a rock and a hard place. And when I run into that, what I do is look for safe haven. I am quite content to say that gold is a good investment, silver is a good investment, the junior resource stocks are a good investment, and all three of them are in a correction, and that's a good thing for the market.
Bob, don't you find it a bit ironic that here we are in the year 2025, where we have this technology called AI that is able to, most of the time, clearly identify facts that may not be normally easy to come by, and the truth. I mean, we can pretty much find the truth pretty quickly about most things these days. Yet we have a president of the United States and a leader of the free world who excels at crafting his own narrative that appears to be independent from the truth at times, you know? And I think if we look back to the history of Donald Trump and go back to the 1980s and his attorney in, you know, Manhattan, Roy Cohn, this is where he learned it. You know, there's several examples from the 80s where Trump had to pay fines for various things that he did in his real estate business, but he crafted the narrative in the media that he won. So even though, you know, he had to pay a fine, I won, I beat the city, you know. And it seems to be very similar right now. He's the president. He has a big mic. He has a loudspeaker across the globe. And yeah, that was a good point you made about the Pakistan, you know, ceasefire with India. He basically took a huge victory lap there, and it's very unclear that it was his doing.
Well, it's really funny because one of the protagonists literally came out and said Trump didn't have anything to do with it. I think the rest of the world is waking up to the Donald Trump conflict between the truth and his narrative. Now, you raised an interesting issue about AI, and AI has as much to do with intelligence as rare earth elements have to do with rare. Okay, any geologist say that rare earth elements is a terrible name because they're not rare. I've been in computers since 1970. Okay, AI is pattern recognition. It is not intelligence, and there's a giant difference between pattern recognition and intelligence. Now, Elon Musk says that true AI could be extremely dangerous, and I actually believe that. I think if they could program a robot to wake up, and the robot had control of his faculties, can do anything he wants, and can reproduce, I think he would look around at human beings and say, these people are too stupid to let breathe. Okay, so in a way, I say this facetiously, but I'm not kidding. I'm really glad I'm old. Okay, if I was 18 or 19 years old, I'd be looking at the world saying, oh shit, what's coming next? We are truly in dangerous times. And the narrative is so bizarre. Now, let me ask you a question. And in fairness, and I don't care what you say, based on the work that you've done and what you've read and who you follow, who do you think won the conflict between India and Pakistan? Or do you pick a winner?
No, there's no winner. I think that if you had to craft a narrative based upon the facts I've seen, Pakistan did better than they were expected to, but I don't think there was a winner.
Well, that's one of the most brilliant things that you've ever said. I'm going to give you 100% credit for that. That's an A+++. Nobody wins any war. The only issue is who loses the most. Now, I'm seeing narrative saying India just walked all over Pakistan, destroyed 4 Pakistani Air Force bases and their nuclear storage facilities. And I'm seeing other narratives saying the Chinese J-10 aircraft they sold Pakistan whipped the shit out of the Indians in the biggest air battle since World War II. And I'm thinking, this is really incredible. I mean, you pick a side as to who won that particular match, and you can pick either side.
I find it hard to believe. I find it hard to believe it was the biggest air battle since World War II. That seems absurd. We have no footage of any of these air battles, these dog fights. We've got nothing. I think I saw one image that may have been a fighter jet from the Indian Air Force that had been shot down across the line in Pakistan. I saw one image.
Well, because I was fighter pilot, I do try to keep up with that. And if you wanted to look at biggest air battles since World War II, it certainly would include Korea, absolutely would include the 7-Day War in Israel. So the idea that it was a giant air battle, it just wasn't so. And I do believe there were about half a dozen Indian aircraft shot down. But, you know, if you're a fighter pilot, that's one of the things you're supposed to do now and again.
Yeah, it's really hard to. It's so interesting. It's this great irony that here we live in this world with hyperspeed information, data flow, AI technology, as you said, pattern recognition, but very fast pattern recognition, the fastest we've ever seen it, to the point it is bordering on intelligence, quite frankly. And yet we can't figure out the truth of something that's all over the media. Who won Pakistan versus India? How many fighter jets were shot down? How many people actually were wounded? How many soldiers were killed? Blah, 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 because both sides are crafting their own narrative, and the narratives don't match. And we're seeing this all over the place, whether it's in the EU with politicians in Brussels or in Washington, D.C. between the Democrats and the Republicans, right? There's a battle over the narrative and what is truth.
Well, you've raised another excellent point. When I was your age, Time, Look, Newsweek, the 6 o'clock news, those were sources of information. Okay. We have 1,000 times more information available to us now. And the problem is you're really forced to figure out how to think for yourself, because you're being lied to by virtually everyone. And I'm really shocked when you see the Ukraine-Russia thing. It's like two different universes, okay? They're not talking about the same thing. And the same thing is true of Gaza and the West Bank. And I'm shocked but pleased to see that the news media in Europe has finally woken up to the fact that there's genocide going on, and they're saying, hey, you know, we figured it out. Genocide is not a good thing. I am shocked at the number of people who just totally ignore what's going on. And it is genocide, it is wrong, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, that I think a lot of people, I mean, I'll tell you how I feel about it. I feel like helpless. Like I can't change it. I can't affect it. Sort of like the Ukraine versus Russia war. I can't change it. I can't stop it. So why am I going to let it cause me grief and anguish? And I think a lot of people feel that way. It's over there, and it's really sad. It's unfortunate, but you know, we're powerless to affect change in something like that.
I sorry, you get an F. Okay. We absolutely have the ability to stand up and speak out. We have the ability to change things. I have been absolutely adamant since October 7th, okay, about what was going on in Gaza. And my position hasn't changed one iota. Now, I'm not saying I change anybody's opinion. However, even Donald Trump is coming around to the point of view that it's wrong, it needs to stop, and we need to do something. I think that the alternative media, and you certainly are an important part of that, has a lot more impact than people want to admit. And the mainstream media has just totally prostituted itself. I don't think anybody gives them credit at all any longer. So I actually think we're doing something that is heroic and it's valuable, and I intend to keep going.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm skeptical progress will be made in either conflict in the near future, but I would love to see it. I would love to see a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. But let's talk about gold, Bob. And I have a few points of interest here. First of all, you know, I wrote a blog post last week saying that this time is different for gold. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be bull and bear cycles in the gold price. It just means that it is different than it has ever been previously in the history of gold. And there's a lot of things, there's a lot of reasons for that today, including what appears to be the reshaping of the global monetary system and a rebalancing of global trade. Is it ever different, Bob? Is it ever really different in markets?
Yeah. Okay. And you just raised a really good point. And in my book, when I talk about investing, I say it's never different. and strange enough, I'll admit, you're right, I'm wrong. It is absolutely different this time. You could see it in the silver gold ratio that something has changed dramatically. And what we're seeing, I think, easily could turn into the demise of the dollar. My opinion, it's just my opinion, is that the whole tariff thing is utter stupidity. It's one of those battles that you could fight. There's just nothing you can win. And I think gold, and especially silver, are about to come into their own. And in 6 months or a year, or in a couple of years, people are going to realize gold makes a far better monetary system than pieces of paper. I think there's a shift going on that's invisible to most people. Clearly, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Thais, the Vietnamese are unloading treasury bonds, and that's going to make a big difference. So everybody's been talking about how interest rates are going to go down. I don't believe so. I think that the Trump administration and the $37 trillion in debt is the kiss of death for the dollar. The United States is bankrupt. I mean, nobody wants to say that. I'll say it. We're $200 trillion in debt in unfunded liabilities over the next 50 years. We're $37 trillion in real debt that is funded. And I think we've got $7.5 or $8 trillion in treasury bonds and notes that has to be issued this year. And I think the world is puking. I think the end of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency is a lot closer than people think. And I think it could be a catastrophic crash. And I'll give a lot of credit to the Chinese. Chinese been picking up gold for years. Something is absolutely going on. China and the Western Pacific controls price of gold, and that's never happened before.
Yeah, it has never happened before. And the gold price is being increasingly set in the East. And in 2025, there have been some major new catalysts coming out of China, including basically using the Shanghai Gold Exchange as a vehicle to have the Chinese yuan, accepted across the globe, and for settlement transactions that can be settled in gold if people choose to. So they can choose the CNY or they can choose gold, and it's sort of interchangeable. And gold has this unique utility as the asset that is recognized globally with no counterparty risk, and it's neutral, right? So it's just a completely neutral asset, and there's nothing quite like gold, and I think the Chinese have obviously identified that, and that's why they've decided to make it a key underpinning of their strategy to usurp the dollar as the reserve currency.
Let me give you an example, and I think this proves that I've got a major point when I talk about we could have a catastrophic change in the value of the dollar and the value of gold. Bitcoin, with a $2 trillion market cap, has changed 6.5% in the last 7 days. Ethereum has changed 41%. XRP has changed 20%. Okay, those are catastrophic moves. Okay, now it's not a zero-sum game, so there is one buyer and one seller. But when you got any kind of financial instrument that changes 41% in 7 days, somebody's getting creamed. I believe that the whole system could come unglued far faster than we realize. Now, my opinion, and again, that's just my opinion, but it's an opinion of the guy who spent 20 months in combat. I don't think the India-Pakistan thing is over. I think that's either a giant game on their part, which I give a 50% probability to, or it's some serious ass shit. Okay. And I don't know which one it is. Okay. I can tell you that having 6 airplanes shot down, Christ, that's no big deal. They used to lose that many aircraft in one day in Guadalcanal, and they did it for months. So I can't tell you if the India-Pakistan thing is real or whether it's fake. But at the same time, Israel has made it clear that they intend to attack Iran, and Trump appears to be saying, you're not going to do it with our help. Okay. I'm not sure if that's true. Okay. He could be playing a game that's could be another Trump bullshit. But if, in fact, we can preclude Israel from attacking Iran, that would be a giant positive for the world. And if Israel does attack Iran, I'll ask another trick question that everybody hates me doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. Israel's got about 9 million people. Iran's got about 90 million people. How does a country of 9 million people destroy a country of 90 million? What do they use?
Either nuclear weapons or the United States.
Stop right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So in a way, Trump saying, you're not doing it on my dime, it could be a very dangerous thing to do, because Israel could make the decision, okay, we'll just cross that red line, we'll just use nukes. I'm going to make a point that I've made to several other people, and it's a very important point. Trump could end the war, the carnage in Gaza and the West Bank and Syria and Lebanon with one phone call. Mm-hmm. He could end the war in Ukraine, Russia with one phone call. Now, if he was truly a peace president, which he would like to be identified as, why doesn't he pick up the goddamn phone and make those phone calls? Okay, you and I don't have to agree about who the good guys are, the bad guys, because it doesn't make any difference. But when you provide weapons to one side, you have taken a position. We're still arming Israel and we're still arming Ukraine, and it's a negative-sum game in both situations. We're destroying the reputation and the credibility of the United States, and I hate to see that.
Yeah, it's true. He could absolutely stop, the Israel-Gaza conflict with one phone call. But obviously, we know that's very complicated, and there's a lot of powers that be in Washington that don't want that to happen. But
let me stop you right there. Okay, what's his whole point of going to the Middle East this week? What's he trying to achieve? What's his victory going to be? Because I can tell you what his victory.
Well, he wants to shake them down for money. He wants to announce a bunch of investments into the U.S. and
bingo. No. He wants to sell a bunch of weapons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the United States has gone down absolutely the wrong path. We have an economy based on 2 pillars. One pillar is the military-industrial complex, and the other is the monetary paper shufflers, okay, who are now, I think, 32% of the economy. The military-industrial complex has bankrupted the United States, and sooner or later we're going to realize it. And the one thing that I'll say, every indication that I've seen from India and from Ukraine is the American weapons and the German weapons and the European weapons don't work.
All right, let's go back to gold, because I think this is really interesting, this situation here, because obviously gold has had a fantastic year in 2025. It's actually had a fantastic last 3 years, more than doubling from its low in 2022.
No. You got an F.
Okay.
What's the best
Why is that?
investment? What's the best investment of the last 25 years?
Gold.
Thank you. Okay, here's what's funny. You're talking about gold this week, this month, last year. Bullshit. Okay, gold has been an incredible investment. It's been the best investment for 25 years, and nobody realizes it. Nobody talks about it. It's not on the front page of the newspaper. It's not in the news. It's kind of, well, gold's up another $100. Well, $100 used to be a lot of money.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So the question I want to ask is, the last two major bull market cycles in gold were, I would say, 1976 to 1980. Gold went from 100 to over 800 an ounce, so that was an 8x. And then 2000 to 2011, gold went from 250 to 1900. So again, that was almost an 8x. You know, different time frames. The late 70s bull market was much more powerful and rapid and short-lived. But both about an 8x, right? And so if we start this bull market cycle in 2015, when gold bottomed at 1045 an ounce, and we say, well, it's going to do another 7 or 8x, just like it's done before, that would project to $7,000 or $8,000 an ounce as the ultimate price target. Is that a reasonable assumption, or is that just wrong, Bob?
One of the banks just came out and said that if 0.5% of the world's investable income moved into gold, gold would move to $6,000 an ounce. Now, 1929, I think mining stocks were 29% of the Dow Jones. They're 0.5% now. I think in hindsight, it's going to be obvious. I find it very funny and very interesting that even though gold's been a rocket ship for months, okay, you do not see wild bullishness. And right underneath the surface, you got gold up day after day after day. And if you look at gold stocks today, virtually everything I own is down. And it's really funny. Gold's gone from 3,500 to 3,150, and everybody's out. Okay, party's over. You know, out of the pool. Well, bullshit. Okay, the party's only just started. Okay, there are so many more reasons. They're visible and obvious, and anybody should be able to see. My God, if you didn't need a bunker today, okay, there isn't any point in the last 2,000 years where a bunker would be a handy thing to have. My God, I get scared every day because there's some new bullshit story going on that's getting crammed down our throat. And I say, oh God, okay, who's going to war next? So let me give you an example. Let me prove it. Trump met with the president of Syria. Now, the president of Syria was not actually one of those guys who was elected to office. He just marched in with this thug, shot up a bunch of people, okay, and said, okay, I'm the president. It was one vote for the president, and the president was voting for the president. Donald Trump says, God, you know, great story. You know, he's a young guy, he's an attractive guy. And I'm thinking, Donald, stop sucking up to this guy. We had a $10 million we had a $10 million reward for him, dead or alive, 6 months ago. And now you're kissing up to this guy who's a thug. So, you know, we live in a really strange world and dangerous world. And it's a good time to head for the bunker. It's a good time to own some gold. And there are so many junior resource stocks, and you do a really good job. I'm going to give you credit for this. You do a really good job of pointing out some excellent investment opportunities for people. We're going to look back on it 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years from now and say, God, why didn't somebody warn us? And of course, that's what you and I have been doing for years.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you did mention that 25-year time frame, because I know 321 Gold started 25 years ago. So you literally caught this bull market cycle just about perfectly. You couldn't have timed it better to start a gold-focused, investment news and opinion site at the bottom of a bear market and the start of at the start of a new bull market. I want to talk about gold sentiment for a second, and then junior mining. The sentiment aspect of gold is really tricky here, because I can look at some sentiment data and see that people are bullish on gold. Okay, there's some like Bank of America surveys saying that gold is the most crowded trade as of early May. But then I look at other sentiment data, and it's, daily sentiment index hasn't gotten above 90. There's other, newsletter writer sentiment that's not flashing, euphoria yet. It's really tricky. And then, like, I was speaking at a conference in Vancouver last week, and one of the people in the Q&A session asked me why gold has been so disappointing.
Exactly.
Okay. I was like, what?
What?
It's hard for me to gauge the sentiment, but it doesn't feel like a top.
We're nowhere near a top. I called the top in silver in 2011 to the day, and the DSI for silver was 96. And on January 21st of 1980, when it hit $50 for the first time, it was 95. So people were more bullish in 2011 than they were in 1980. But I'm a big believer in sentiment. The sentiment in gold has not gone above 87, and it's only gone to 88 for silver. So we've got a lot of room, but there's a lot of conflicting information about sentiment. We've got some sentiment indicators that says it's overbought, and some sentiment indicators saying no. I believe a correction would be a really good thing. I think we're in a correction. I have no issue with that whatsoever. And I think that's a good thing. And at the end, people have one more opportunity to actually make some money. Very good.
Final topic. Let's talk about some juniors. I chose 4, just pulled them out of a hat. What say you about West Red Lake Gold and the bulk sample results the company published last week?
I think they were absolutely brilliant. I'm going to tell you the same thing about West Red Lake Gold as with Newfound Gold. And with those kind of extraordinary intercepts and assays, how can you not have an extraordinary project? The management of West Red Lake is good, and I think that company's going to have it'll get bought out for multiples of billions of dollars.
And Ramp Metal. So this is a company that I actually talked about on Friday during my presentation in Vancouver. And they've had some recent news, including what looks to be a new VMS, discovery, and then they announced an above market financing.
I've been to somewhere between 400 and 500 projects over the last 25 years. Ramp has one of the most interesting projects I've ever seen, because I cannot put my finger on what it's an analog of. And I've talked to management, and they've talked to me about there's some Australian mines that's similar to that. The initial hit, and correct me, I'm going to be fairly correct on this. I think it was 78 grams of gold over 9 meters. Okay, that's
73.5 over 7.5 meters.
Oh, okay. So I was fairly close. I was
Yeah.
off a little bit, but I got it. That's an extraordinary intercept, and that was the first hole. And then they drilled another target nearby and came up with these great VMS numbers. I talked to them, and they're actually an advertiser on my site. So I got a vested interest, and I bought the stock in the open market. And I said, look, guys, I mean, all you got to do is keep getting intercepts like this, and you're going to be a home run, which, of course, is no shit, Bob. We didn't know that. Let me talk to you about the sediment for just a minute. How well do you know Robert Prichter?
I mean, I've seen him speak a couple of times.
Okay, very, very interesting guy, very intelligent guy. And of course, you're well aware of who Martin Armstrong is. Okay. Yeah. These guys have made some incredible predictions in the past that have come true, and I will give them credit. In 2000, what were they saying gold was going to do?
I believe Prichter was bullish, wasn't he?
No.
No, he wasn't.
Prichter and Martin Armstrong said gold was going to go to $200.
Well, they were almost right. They were almost right.
Ah, shit, they messed it by 20%. Gold only went 252 or 253. The really interesting thing is the guys who have some of the best reputations in the business for predictions were absolutely dead wrong. And they were predicting disaster at the time they should have been predicting a turnaround. Okay. And I will take credit. I wrote a piece. I was actually running a computer site, and I wrote a piece in May of 2000 and said, okay, this is it. This is the bottom. This is what it looks like. And I'm going to take credit. I don't know anyone else who got it closer than I did. And the biggest names in the industry got it absolutely dead wrong. I say something, I think it's actually very intelligent. Nobody wants to believe it because it's too simple. At every market top, there's 100 reasons to buy. And at every market bottom, there's 100 reasons to sell. And that's what makes tops and bottoms. You run out of buyers at the top and you run out of sellers at the bottom. And to the extent that a lot of people, this guy that you were talking to, when you did your speech was really funny. I mean, gold's done nothing, okay, negative over the last month or 6 weeks. And they, oh yeah, my gold went down. It's over. What? Where have you been for the last 25 years? But I make jewelry. You can kind of see my workbench behind me. I was buying gold 260, 270, 280, and I make jewelry and I make it in gold. People say, well, it's much too expensive for you to work in gold. I said, well, there's a world of difference between paying $275 an ounce for gold and paying $32.50 for an ounce for gold. So I don't buy gold at this price. Okay, I make jewelry out of the stuff that I bought when it was cheap. I'll tell you a funny story about me, because I am the ultimate contrarian. I became a contrarian and an investor in gold and silver when I went to Vietnam, and I looked around and I realized how much the war was costing. Silver was $1.29 an ounce, and gold was $35 an ounce. And I said, you gotta own that. So I lost track there.
You bought gold in Vietnam?
Yeah, I bought it in Thailand. I was flying to Thailand once a week or so. Gold was $35 an ounce, and they were literally just giving it away. But there's so many fundamental reasons why you want to own gold, and there's so much great stock. You talk about West Red Lake. West Red Lake is the creme de la creme, but there's also 300 or 400 other companies out there that are selling for peanuts. Okay, I think I bought West Red Lake at like 45 or 50 cents a share.
Mm-hmm. Bob, did you read the last article I published on my Substack, including the video about Talon metals?
Yes.
All right. Did you have a chance to see the Talon news where they posted some pictures of the drill core of their latest hole?
Yes.
So I've never seen drill core that was basically pure metal like that. I mean, I've seen massive sulfides, I've seen, massive chalcopyrite, but I've never seen massive pentlandite and chalcopyrite, and it's just basically pure metal for meters and meters and meters. It seems to me like Talon Metals may have just drilled into something pretty extraordinary, and it kind of makes sense when you put the story together and how the way that these ore bodies are uncovered. Essentially, they start closer to surface, and then they figure out how to vector at depth. But to drill 700 meters or 800 meters, it takes a while. It takes years sometimes to figure it out, and to vector into the higher grade zones of an ore body, and that seems to be what's happening at Tamarack. And I invite the viewers to actually check out my Substack, Goldfinger Capital, and check out the latest news from Talon Metals, including the assays they put out for the first hole into this new massive sulfide unit, which was actually grading 23% nickel equivalent over 8 meters, which is it's pretty extraordinary. And this is in the US, right? This is not in Zimbabwe or Russia. This is in the US. So I'm interested in your take on what you've seen me post about Talon.
Well, I think it was good, but in a way, I think you're missing the boat.
Why is
there
that?
Are 500 companies out there that are going to go up 500 to 1,000%. Okay, Talon is the best. Okay, West Red Lake is the best. You make a very good point about sometimes it takes years. Okay, Fosterville, I think, went through 4 different companies before Kirkland Lake picked it up. And the management of Kirkland Lake told Quentin Henney that he was full of crap. Okay, had no idea what he was talking about. Quentin was sent over there by Eric Sprott to evaluate the thing, and he came back and said, "You want that? That's a good deal." And they paid $1 billion for Fosterville, and they were only a $3 billion company at the time. But they went from like 80 or 100,000 ounces a year to 500,000 ounces a year. And that has been literally a gold mine ever since. When they did their first pour, after they got into the really high-grade material, have you ever seen them do a pour where they got multiple molds and it goes from one mold into another?
Yeah.
So they pull the lever and they start pouring the gold, and they soon realized they had more gold than they had molds. Okay. And literally,
that sounds like it could be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody in the company said, you know, Quentin Eddy's full of shit. I mean, he's over here saying it's just loaded with gold. None of the numbers showed the real amount of gold they had. They had to weld lips onto these molds so the molds would hold the gold. And we're going to have similar stuff like that. But there's 500 extraordinary stories out there, and you could throw darts and make money.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and I know that's what you wrote in your book, and that's something that you espouse. And I will say again, viewers, take a look at Talon Metals, do your research on it, and $150 million market cap for massive nickel deposit in the U.S. in Minnesota. Company has a 60% interest, and Rio Tinto has the other 40%. So it's not 100%, but this is one where if they're able to show some scale, if they're able to continue stepping out on this new massive sulfide unit that they've discovered now with 2 holes into it, it's, you know, there's a deposit in Labrador that people often talk about that helped to make Robert Friedland famous. And so maybe this could be another story like that. Bob, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation. And, you know, until we speak again next month.
Super deal. Thank you.